I'm going to jump into something that I think, as I picture my 2.5-year-old. Now, you may be wondering first off the get-go, hey, I thought Mother's Day, there was supposed to be a lady preaching, and I thought we were supposed to definitely talk about like Esther or Ruth or something in the ballpark of a lady figure in the church, right? So some of you guys, I'm just going to tell you from the get-go, you may be highly disappointed if that is your expectation from me this morning, okay? I want to say this on the front side. We're in a series called Our Imperfect Family. Who knows that moms are part of families? So this is going to relate to the mom in the room, but I don't want to lose all the gentlemen. I don't want to lose everyone else that showed up to church today to hear a word from God. So I'm going to do my best to weave in and out of Mother's Day, but also to the church itself. So I hope today that's okay. But I want to start by reading something I found. This is super cool because I can picture my 2.5-year-old being this second grader at one point. So if you've had a second grader, maybe you will have one that gets the second grade. They asked second graders why God made moms. Here's what second graders had to say. Why did God make mothers? She's the only one who knows where the Scotch tape is. These are real answers. Mostly to clean the house. Now, I didn't put that in there. That was a second grader's opinion. Let's pray for that person. Number 3, to help us out when we were getting born. That was the reason that God made mothers. Okay, how did God make mothers? Well, he used dirt, just like for the rest of us. Okay, that works. Another kid said, magic plus superpowers and a lot of stirring. I don't even know what that means. Here's how God made mothers. God made my mom just the same like he made me. He just used bigger parts. What ingredients are mothers made of? God makes mothers out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world and one small dab of mean. Thank you, second grader. What ingredients are mothers made of? They had to get their start from men's bones. Then they mostly use string, I think. What did mom need to know about dad before she married him? His last name. Okay, that's a good start. She had to know his background, like, is he a crook? Does he get drunk on beer? This was the second kid. Last one. Does he make at least $800 a year? Did he say no to drugs and yes to chores? This is what mom needed to know about dad. I heard this other story about there was the kids' play going on at the front of the church, and we do this once a month. And if you've seen it, we have our kids' worship team up here, and it'd be kind of like that. But there was a mom in the front row, and her second grade kid, he had a special line in the play they were doing that morning at church, and so she's trying to get him to remember his line because he's sitting there like this, like he's frozen. He can't remember his line, and so the mom's whispering clues, and he's not getting any of the clues, and so finally she says, I am the light of the world. That's his line. And so he finally hears her and he beams up and he says, my mother is the light of the world. Kids and moms have a very special relationship, and so to all the mothers in here, cherish the moments. Yesterday I found myself tearing up over a stupid Hallmark video because I'm thinking of how quickly it goes and it fades, and it's so fast. And so cherish your moments if you're a parent of someone in the house, and if your kids are long gone, get excited about grandparenthood because I heard it's the real deal and it's the best way to be in a small child relationship. When I was a kid, I remember hearing things from the more mature folk, the more seasoned folk. You get where I'm going with this? With the older generation, I used to hear some things said. And here's some things that they would say as I was a kid, and I would hear them say, oh, the kids these days, they have no respect. None. No respect. The kids these days, they got no work ethic. They don't know how to work like we did back in our day. They don't know how to do it. These kids these days, they have no morals, no moral compass. World's going to hell in a handbasket, right? So I used to hear this as a kid, And I used to, yeah, whatever, like, I don't care, whatever. It just didn't mean much to me, right? As a kid, as a teenager, even in my early 20s, it just didn't matter much. And here's what I've realized, and this is where I want to land, and this is what I want to talk about today as we continue in our imperfect family. We're talking about things that would be game changers for our family. I hope last week some people set up some appointments in your personal life to resolve some conflict, because I believe that is a life-changing principle. But in the same way today, as I was thinking about what are some things that would be generational changers for our culture and our world? What would be a game changer in my family? And here's what I thought. I thought, where has the honor gone in my generation? Where is the honor? Now, one of two things is true. Either I'm old or I'm right. One of the two. Maybe I'm that older person already, and I'm starting to spit things out towards the generation below me, or the one that I'm in. But honestly, I really started to think through this principle. First, what is honor? And what would honor do if it were to be active and flowing in our families, in our church, in our work life, in our community? What would honor do? Do you think we'd be better or worse if we had more honor in our world? I don't know that anyone would fight that, like, no, I'm all for dishonor. I choose to disrespect. I love living in a culture of slander and mistreating people. That's where I want to live, right? I think in our heart of hearts, we'd all say, I think a little bit more honor would do us well. So let's define honor before we move on. Here's the definition between honor and dishonor. Honor means to show value, worth, weight, appreciate, esteem, respect, regard favorably. These are all action things that we do. These are not passive. These are moving. These are responsive characteristics of honor. Now, dishonor. I was always very confused about dishonor, because I thought dishonor was being egregious and being outright disrespectful, and to go out of my way to demean someone's values or someone's personal opinion, to be overtly mean and aggressive. That's what I view dishonor as. But you know that dishonor means to treat as ordinary or common. So I wonder if we were to look at, that's one way of dishonor. Now, there is the very outward approach, which that is 100% dishonor. But dishonor sometimes is disguised in our lives, and where we maybe think we're showing honor, maybe we're actually sprinkling in more dishonor than we would think. So let's talk through this a little bit. I'm going to highlight some areas of honor that I believe we could bring into our lives. And so this part will be super practical. I think some people may cheer for when it's your turn to say, yes, this is where honor should be flowing to me. You can cheer for that, but I believe God's going to show us a few things that we can show value, worth, weight, appreciate, esteem, show respect, and regard favorably in our life. Let me just tell you, it starts with God. There is no more supreme or higher authority in this world that we live underneath. So God gets all of our honor, and sometimes we fall short, but that is the number one place of honor in our life. So let's move on. Assuming that God is number one, what are some other places that we are to show honor? Number one, parents. If we're going to talk about honor, then we have to talk about Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Parents, get excited. This is your verse. This is your time to celebrate. Children of all ages, obey your parents in the Lord. Obey. We hate that word in our culture. Obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, so that it may go well with you and that you may enjoy long life on the earth. Do you know, outside of God, the first authority that you are placed underneath is your parents? Now, I'll be honest, I didn't get to choose my parents, and I had a very dysfunctional childhood. And I don't know why. Honestly, I'll get to heaven one day and probably won't matter, and maybe I won't ever even think to ask God. But in my earthly way, I would ask God, like, why did you do it that way? I got a super dysfunctional childhood, and I wonder sometimes why other people got two parents their whole life, and they didn't have financial issues in their family, and there wasn't drug patterns all throughout. Like, I wonder that sometimes, like, God, why was that the way that my life went? But in the same thing, I used to think honor and dishonor as something very different than what I know them to be today. And I find out when the word says to honor our mother and father, it's to be action-oriented to show them value, worth, weight, appreciate, esteem, respect, or to regard favorably. And so today, I don't know what your relationship to your parents is like. I don't know if your parents are still with us. But if they are, I don't know when you think about them, how do you view them? The Bible says that this is the only commandment with a promise that when we show honor towards our God-given authority through our parents, that we are promised long life on the earth and it will go well for us. This doesn't mean like go clean up your room and you didn't clean up your room, like God's going to revoke the promise over your life. This is a lifetime. And in the same way that as a parent today, I desperately want my kid to one day honor and respect me, I need to show that as the child. Even though I'm in my mid-30s now, I can still show my dad honor and respect. It's not the end of this verse. Parents, you got comfortable for a moment. Verse 4 says, fathers and mothers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. What does this mean? Don't wear them out. Don't wear them out. Now, you got to train them. There's a difference between teaching and training and rebuking and correcting all the time, right? There's a balance in it. There's a difference. So, young parent, I'm talking to myself. Get it in your DNA that I'm going to be a teacher and a trainer, not just a corrector. Because I think we all can say, like, I remember that. It was so hard. Maybe my dad or my mom, they just corrected me all the time, but they didn't show me how to do it the right way. They just told me how to not do it. Let's be a generational parent that say, I'm going to teach. I'm going to train. And it takes more time. It takes more effort. It takes more sacrifice to do it that way. But I promise you, it will always pay off in the long run. So number one, we are to honor our parents. Number two, we're to honor our civil or government leaders. Come on, let that pin drop. Let that pin drop. Don't act like I don't know this room is heavily divided when it comes to our civil or government leaders. Now, can I just speak for a moment candidly? When Jesus entered the landscape of the world that we know it, do you know that he was in a highly dysfunctional government system? Do you know that the Romans were highly oppressing the Jews? Do you know that Jesus, there's not one verse in the entire Bible where Jesus went out of his way or overtly tried to overthrow the government? He tried to share the love that he was bringing on the planet in the midst of a government that was very dysfunctional. So I just want the person in here to say, like, oh, I would submit, I would respect, I would honor if they did this and didn't do this, and this law was this way, and it all lined up perfectly with my belief system, I would respect and I would honor the people that are placed in authority over me. Can I tell you, God's word doesn't instruct that. If we're going to really get serious about a culture of honor, then we're going to honor the way God told us to honor. And it's not so personal to what we think or what we want. Here's what Paul is teaching within a very volatile government system. In the book of Romans chapter 13, here's what Paul says. Let every soul, let all of us, be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Now this is a tongue twister, because it makes you upset. I'll just be honest, since I've been able to vote. I'm not going to tell you who I voted for every time, because I'm not trying to get a church split. But you can laugh, it's okay. I know politics are very, hard to talk about, so I'm going to leave it right there and not a step further. But it's not based off of who I voted for, and if I voted for that person, now I can give my honor and respect to them. This is meant to be countercultural. This is meant to be something that comes from the heart, not who's sitting there and who agrees with me. This is one of the most difficult things, and this is one of the great dividers in the world that we live in today. I will tell you today, and I don't want to stay here because this isn't really the point, but police officers are right in here with government authorities, but we are called to show honor, to show respect. It doesn't mean you agree. There's a difference. You can disagree. It's okay. You can have a best friend and you don't agree on everything. That's okay, but you're called to honor them, respect them, give them an opportunity to work this out in their heart. We can have disagreements and still show honor. So I want us to know that in the church today. It's okay if we disagree. It's not okay to dishonor. Employers, 1 Timothy, it talks about it uses the context of a slave and master, which today that is obviously a very different context than where we live, but it's talking about an employer and an employee relationship. We are called to honor our bosses. Now, I don't know how bad you got it at work, but this could be a very difficult for someone in this room, because the boss you're thinking about does not deserve any honor and respect. Again, it doesn't mean agreeing. It doesn't mean having them over for dinner. But it does mean that we honor them in the sense of showing value, worth, weight to the authority that is in them over us. This goes for coaches and teachers. Number 4, can I preach to the church? Church leaders. Come on, somebody. This is the only time I ever get to use this verse. Honor and respect church leaders. This goes for small group leaders. This goes for really anyone in the church that is trying their best to lead you, trying to point you towards Jesus. Listen, we're going to mess it up. We're going to get it wrong. We're going to have bad days. We're going to say stupid stuff. We're going to give you bad looks. We're going to miss you in the parking lot. The coffee's going to be lukewarm. The song's not going to be right. Okay? Right? It's not experiential. We don't honor based off of how good it was. We honor because God told us to. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, it says, honor those who are your leaders in the Lord's work. They work hard among you and warn you against all that is wrong. Think highly of them and give them your wholehearted love because of their work. I'll take a hug after service. I need one. No, I'm just kidding. This is just an opportunity to show honor. Now, John Bevere, he said something incredible, and I wanted to read you a quote he wrote in one of his books. He said, submission to authority is an aspect of true honor. To say we honor authority yet refrain from submission and obedience to it is to deceive ourselves. A lot of times we got the right words for it. We attach the right sentences. But many times our life we don't show submission and we don't show obedience to the things and the people that God has called us to honor. So I'm going to give you 2 main points today. Number 1 is this, I would write this down. The amount of honor you give is determined by the amount of value you see. This is true. You know this is true. The amount of honor that you will give someone, something, is directly related to the amount of value that you see in them. So this is where we become very finicky. Because we all look at things, we could all look at the exact same thing, the same church leader, the same government leader, the same figure of Jesus. We could all look at the same thing, and based off of what we see, we will honor it differently based off the value system we attach to that person or that thing. So what we need to know today is that there are things that we place honor in all the time. I'm going to give you some examples. What are some of the things that we show honor to? Our flag, our country. Right? When people stand up, when people salute, when people stand at attention, when they do those things, it's to show honor. That's what they're attempting to do, is say, hey, I'm going to show overt appreciation, and I'm going to choose to do it in this way. We do this towards our country, towards our flag. We do this towards sporting teams. You know that? Because what does honor mean? It means to show value, worth, weight, appreciate, esteem, respect, regard favorably. Some of y'all's team stinks, but you make an overt action on Sundays or Saturdays to make sure that you don't miss the game. Or maybe it's a baseball game, maybe it's a basketball game. We show honor and appreciation and carve out time for sporting events all the time. What about our family? Some people do an incredible job of showing honor in their family. Maybe it's not until a death happens. And then we really start to show honor to the remembrance and the legacy of that person. Maybe we didn't do it so well while they were with us, but once death comes, maybe that's a place of honor that we show. Maybe towards the elderly. Maybe some people you go out of your way to show respect and honor to those who have gone before us. What about God? Is God in that mix for us? Do we show honor towards God and the things of God? That's a question. Thomas Carlyle said this. He said, show me the person you honor, and I will know what kind of person you are. show me the things that you honor. Show me the things that you really go out of your way to appreciate and esteem and regard highly. And that'll be a litmus test a little bit about who we are and what's in our heart. And it's a question we need to ask ourselves today. Because the amount of honor you give is determined by the amount of value you see. The truth is that some of us, we may need to refocus what we're looking at. Because the same thing, right? We can all look at Jesus. He's the same figure that we're looking at, but we may all esteem him and regard him in totally different ways. So we have to understand, where does the value come from? We may not see the value that's truly in front of us, and Jesus experienced this. And I want to show this to you in the Bible, because this is profound if we were to understand the link between honor and faith and how intricate this is. And once we do this and we do it God's way, how much this could change the culture around us if we were to be a culture carrier of honor. But Jesus was confronted with this issue of dishonor and disbelief head on. And I want you to see what happened. Many of you will know this, but I want you to know that our lack of honor and faith can limit what God does. And we're going to read this in Matthew chapter 13. It's found in multiple places in the gospel. I'm going to read out of Matthew chapter 13. Here's what happened. Verse 53. When Jesus had finished these parables, right? We just did a whole series on the parables, right? So he was reading through all these parables. People were getting moved. People were understanding God in a whole new way. He moved on from there. He taught and he moved on. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Oh my, you've never heard teaching like this. He's talking about love over law. This is unheard of. People were astonished and amazed and bewildered. People would line up for hours to hear him. The whole town was talking about this Jesus. Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers, they asked. People were astounded and astonished by Jesus. Right? They showed value to what they saw, which was a man that was doing miracles that no one had ever seen, was speaking a gospel that no one had ever heard, was talking about the kingdom of heaven and how it was for people. People were astonished and amazed by the message. So we're good right now, right? I'm with you, Jesus. I'm tracking. I like this. This is all good. But here's what they did, and here's what we do. Verse 55. Isn't this the carpenter's son? Wait, isn't his mother's name Mary? Wait, aren't his brothers James and Joseph, Simon and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. They loved him until they realized he was one of them. And now all of a sudden, Jesus wasn't the same Jesus that they were just praising and astonished by. It had all changed. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home. And he did not do many miracles there because of their lack of faith. Let me tell you what the difference was. Familiarity. Familiarity is one of the greatest enemies of honor. Can I tell you? I'm going to speak to a couple people groups. Husbands, sometimes when your wives go to work, man, the whole office looks at this woman as just such an incredible woman. She's got it all together. She's got so much joy. She's got so many wise things to say. She's such an incredible leader in the workplace. People look at her and they respect her and they revere her and they view highly, highly, highly of her. And sometimes she comes home and she walks into a place of dishonor, not because you're trying to beat her up and to lessen her role, but we treat her as common, as ordinary. This is my wife, man. We've been married 10 years. We good. She knows how I feel about her. Dishonor, so many times, it manipulates itself in the form of just ordinary. When we stop, this is what they did to Jesus. They put him on this platform until they realized, oh, this is Jesus. He's from our town. We know his brothers, his mom. We know. he ain't nothing. Trust me. Nothing good comes from this line. And many times we do this in our home. We treat the people that God has gifted us and blessed us with and put right in the middle of our life. And many times we show dishonor not because we're trying to be manipulative, but it's because we just treat them as common. And so today I think this would be a game changer for us to evaluate the amount of honor you give is determined by the amount of value that you see. Moms, dads, brothers, sisters, sons, daughters, you are a gift from God. And I pray that you would be treated that way by the people that are most familiar with you. But familiarity can be one of the greatest enemies of honor. It doesn't have to be. I'm going to beat some of these things into us today, okay? Honor versus dishonor. Honor means to show value, show worth, show weight, appreciate, esteem, respect, regard favorably. These are all ways that we can show honor. To dishonor means to treat as common or ordinary. The amount of honor you receive, let's flip it. The amount of honor that you receive, because maybe that's not you today. Maybe you feel like no one respects you, no one applauds you, no one is submitting to your authority, right? Maybe that's you. The amount of honor you receive may be determined by the amount of honor you give. Now, sometimes people are going to be people, right? And in your workplace, you may be doing it all right. You may be doing it ethically. You may be doing it God's way. You may be doing your absolute best. You're loving people well. And sometimes people are still going to overtly show you dishonor, right? That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a principle of reaping and sowing. And I'm going to land here because this is such a powerful principle. And if you understand this is God's way, then it maybe will force us to be a little more intentional about the sowing of seeds that we're putting all throughout our life. So let's talk through Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. This will be the last verse we use today. The Bible says, do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. A man reaps what he sows. This is harvesting. What you put into the ground, you will get out of the ground. This is used in an agricultural sense. Every farmer understands the meaning of this principle. We reap what we sow, we reap more than we sow, and we reap later than we sow. I'm going to break this down for a moment. Starts us off by saying, do not be deceived. I think what he's trying to address here is that there is a misconception among some people that either this isn't true or I'm the exception to the rule. He's saying, no. I need all of you to know we're all in the exact same place. God's laws and God's principles are lasting. They're forever. They don't change. No matter how important you are, no matter what your last name is, no matter how much money you make, no matter how funny you are, none of those things shift or change God's principles. And one of God's mandated principles in our soul and in this life is that we will reap what we sow. Do not be deceived. You're not the exception. So we can't sow dishonor and expect to reap honor. It doesn't work that way. It can never work that way, in fact. It's impossible spiritually for us to sow something and then reap something else. What we sow, we will have a harvest come about. We reap more than we sow. You see, when farmers plant seeds, they may plant one seed, but the reason that they intentionally plant that seed is because they know that when that harvest comes about, it's actually going to create tons more seeds that come out of that one plant. And there's potentially hundreds of new plants that will come from one planted seed. So what we should know, and when the word says, do not be deceived, God will not be mocked, you will reap what you sow. We reap more than we sow. Now, this is a really good thing, or this is a really bad thing. This could be a really difficult thing. If we're sowing honor, if we're sowing generosity, we're going to reap those things in return. But if we're sowing something else, we will reap what we sow. And that's a principle from God. The truth is that we reap later than we sow. And I'll finish with this. Sometimes we want the quick return. And some people, we're sowing honor, but we don't feel like it's being returned to us. We feel like we walk into our workplace or our home and we're sowing honor, we're sowing love, we're sowing generosity, but we feel like we're just not getting it returned to us. Can I tell you that some crops take longer to harvest? But they will. Good news is they will harvest. They will come from the seed that was planted. Do we model honor in our home? These are some questions we're going to finish with today. Do we honor God in our homes? Are we showing our kids what honor looks like? That's a question that we all have to ask ourselves. Do we honor our boss? Do we honor our spouse? Do we honor our parents or our elected officials? Do we show honor and practice submission to the authority that God has placed over our life? These are questions that we have to wrestle with. These are questions that could be game changers for us if we were to start to esteem highly the authority that God's placed in our life. I'm going to finish with this, 3 words. Here's how we show honor. Words, action, submission. You know you can show honor today by telling your mom how much you love her, how great she is, the things that she never knew that you picked up on. That's an easy way to show your mom honor today. Just words. Write it, call it, Facebook status. All those things are appropriate ways to show honor. You could use your words today to change someone's day. You could do that in your home. You could do that in your workplace. You can do that in our community. Number 2 is action. Doing things for people is a way to show honor. Hey, Mom, can I help you with the dishes? Can I get an amen from any of the ladies? Can I help you do something around the house that would free you up some time? I know you just got home from work. I know that would be an incredible gift to some people, but action. And number 3 is submission. We honor them by doing what we were asked to do. Now, I know there's not a ton of kids in here, so maybe this applies in a workplace environment. I know this maybe applies in a different context than maybe, you're the 7-year-old at home and, you need to go home and practice this thing out. But this principle of honor, it's so much more than just as that small child and older parent relationship. This is a life-changing, life-giving opportunity for us as Christians. We're going to finish today. If you just bow your heads and close your eyes for a moment. God, I just lay my heart before you. God, I want to honor you. Before I honor anyone else or honor anything else, God, before I show value or esteem anyone or anything, God, I pray that you would get my best. You would get the first fruits of my love and my attention. God, I ask you to do that in my heart. Pray for the person here today that says, honor is so difficult for me. I hold on to memories and thoughts. I'm thinking about things that were done, things that were said. And so for me to think about giving and showing honor, to esteem highly, it's just so difficult. God, I pray for that person today. Pray for all the moms in the room. I pray that they would find their joy, their satisfaction from you alone. God, that it's a blessing when we get it on earth, but to know that it's coming from you, God, I pray that would be where we seek your love, your approval, your attention. God, I pray today that you would just lavishly pour that out on us. God, today as we choose to esteem you, I pray that we would esteem the people in our lives that you've placed, that maybe we're treating as common. Maybe our spouses, we're treating them as ordinary and common and not realizing the gift that they are. God, I pray today that you would help shift and change our heart. God, I pray if we struggle to show honor in our workplace or in our community, towards our government, God, I pray that you are the only one that can change a person's heart. So God, if we lay our hearts bare before you and just say, God, would you help me? Because I feel like I can't do it. God, would you show me how to honor the authority that you've placed in my life? I pray that we would know the principle of reaping and sowing, God, that this is a powerful principle. God, I pray that we would be sowers of honor. In a moment, our worship team is going to come up, and we're going to actually end our service today with communion. Thought it would be nice for people to take communion together. If there's families here, you can take communion together today. I'm just going to instruct through this for a moment. Jesus paid the greatest price that could ever be paid so that we could have freedom from ourselves. We could have freedom from our guilt, from our shame, from our sin. He paid the ultimate and only price that ever needed to be paid on the cross. And when he paid that price, he said it was finished. And through that, it means there's no more condemnation. And so if there's someone here today and you walked in and maybe there's guilt, maybe there's shame, maybe there's fear, I believe that today as we reflect on what honor is, but as we finish with an action-based opportunity to say, God, I honor your son Jesus through what he did on the cross. I'm going to show honor to the sacrifice that was paid so that I could have freedom. I'm going to do that today, and maybe a mom, you can do that with a daughter or a husband today. You guys can take communion together as we close. But Jesus created a new covenant through the communion table. That no longer were we bound to sin, but now we were able to have freedom and be alive in him. And so we're going to play a song lightly as we close today, and our communion is self-serve, so you can come up one of these middle aisles, you can grab communion and exit along the sides. You can sit together, and a husband and wife, you can pray together if you'd like. A mom and daughter, you can pray together and do communion that way. We're not going to lead you in it from the stage. We're going to release you once you get it and go back to your seat. You can take communion on your own this morning, but we're going to celebrate through an act of showing honor. We show honor to the sacrifice Jesus paid when we take communion. Let me pray, and we'll release you to do that and worship as we close. Jesus, I thank you for your gift of salvation. I'm thankful, God, that you paid the price. If there's anyone here today that you've heard a message about Jesus and you want to honor him by giving him your life today, by surrendering your heart to him, after I finish talking, you want to do that before you take communion, I'll be in the corner. We can pray together. If you want to receive Jesus as your Savior, we can do that. For everyone else, if you've received Jesus as Savior, communion is an ultimate sign of honor for what Jesus did. We'll take that today.